Running new electrical wires on a boat generally is no fun. More often than not, where they need to go is hidden in the bowels of the boat, twisting and turning. I'm Carolyn Sherlock, and on this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast, you'll find some great tips to make a tough job just a little bit easier. This episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Rainman Watermakers and Seatask. Rainman Watermakers are capable of producing up to 37 gallons of fresh, clean drinking water per hour from seawater. Portable and installed models are available, all with off-the-shelf parts. Configurations are available in AC, 12-volt DC, and even a gasoline system, with the new 2019 models being smaller, lighter, and quieter than ever. Seatask is the premier U.S. facility for Rainman Watermakers. Visit them at Seatask Group, that's SEATASKGROUP.com to learn more. Running new electrical wires on a boat is generally just no fun. More often than not, where they need to go is hidden in the bowels of the boat, twisting and turning. A few years ago, we installed a new refrigerator. It runs on 12-volt electricity instead of propane as the previous one did. Overall, that was going to make it much more efficient. But there was just one problem. We had to run new wiring for it. There wasn't any old wiring to even use as a guide. We were going from scratch. It didn't seem like it'd be that big of a deal. Straight line, maybe about an 8-foot run. The way it had to run, though? About 18, and all hidden behind panels that could not be removed. There were a couple of access points in the middle, but they had very tight cutouts. No way would we be able to just snake a wire from one end and expect it to come out where it should. Okay, the first tip that I have, electrician's fish tape. It's designed for just such things. It's a springy, semi-flexible wire tape that comes on a reel in various lengths. Feed it from the end with the more restricted opening. Hopefully you can reach to it and wiggle the end of the tape through, then push it towards the other opening. The tape is rigid enough, unlike the wiring, that it'll go straight and not just ball up when it hits an obstruction. Feeding the tape is easiest with two people. One to push it and then sweep it from side to side, and the other to yell stop when they see it in the other opening and grab it. It's possible to do it by yourself, though. It just takes a lot of going back and forth, moving the fish tape just a little at a time. In the past, we've always been able to pull the new wire through by simply taping it to the fish wire and gently pulling. Not this time. The opening was tight enough that the joint would be pulled apart and we'd have to feed the fish tape all over again. It only took me 2 failed attempts to decide that there had to be a better way. And that brings me to tip number 2. Crimp on a screw connector. I needed a connection that wouldn't come apart even when I tugged on it to get it through the tight spots. The fish tape had a very nice eye on the end. I just needed a way to attach the wire to it. First, I tried stripping a section of wire and then passing it through the eye and twisting it back together and taping it. Didn't work. It pulled apart again. I finally decided to sacrifice a screw connector. I crimped it onto the wire, then used a cable tie to attach it to the fish tape. I put a little wrap of electrical tape over the joint so that it was nice and smooth and wouldn't snag. It held perfectly, even with me having to tug a fair amount to get it through one blind spot. I couldn't believe how easily it worked. After the wire was wrung the whole way, I just cut it off. Okay, now the big thing in buying fish tape is to get one that is stiff enough to push through a narrow opening. Because they're made of stiff material, it can be a bit of a chore both to unwind and wind the tape. Look at it as part of an onboard fitness program. You can get fish tape at any hardware or home improvement store. I've put a link to it on Amazon if that's your preference. Now on our boat, 25 feet is sufficient, and we've even used it to pull new reefing lines through the boom. Now, if you're running wires inside your mast, sometimes a longer fish tape is handy. Sometimes you can do it there with gravity. Sometimes wires need some help if they have to pass through particular channels. One thing to note is that fish tapes are made of mild steel. The ones made of nylon just aren't stiff enough to do the job. So it's best to store it in a Ziploc with a desiccant pack to remove moisture from the air. One more quick tip. We found that sometimes it can still be hard to find the little piece of the end of the fish tape when you're going somewhere. Take a piece of brightly colored duct tape, I particularly like the bright orange, and tape it around the end of it. That gives you a really bright contrasting color to all the other mess of wires that's in a particular place. Thank you for joining us for the Boat Galley Podcast. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. We love having you listen.